to whom I haven't introduced my son and his companion. This is Anthony, and that is Dr. Liz. She's a veterinary surgeon. To the stars of Hollywood bring their pets to her, and she performs tens of thousands of dollars worth of therapy and surgery on the pets. So this is quite something. I've been hearing wonderful stories about cats and dogs in trouble. Cats that come in with broken legs and come out of her surgery either with 3 legs or walking again. So quite a miraculous person. And so after the visit from the Los Angelenos is over, I'm going to go to Atlanta to check. There's that is our Shakespeare expert. After this class, many of them stay on, and many others flood into this classroom for a Shakespeare reading class. And so it's good of you to come to this flood.
Sorry, I'm a little late.
And so I'm putting this on there for you to see when I will next be talking of her again. It will be 9/11, a most unfortunate day, of course, but I'll be here if you will be here. If you're interested in where I'm going to be, I'll be in Atlanta to sort of witness the return of my one and only grandson, who is now an engineer, and I'll be interested to hear if he's going to be gainfully employed in the future. That's still up for grabs. Yes.
And
yes.
I just want to make sure you won't be here then until 9/11.
Right.
Okay.
So, okie doke. Ta-da. This whole series was predicated on the fact that at the River Oaks on Sunday morning at 11, they would continue their series of live from Covent Garden, London, whatever operas they had decided there to show in the cinema, just as they do over here with Live from the Met. And so I thought, you'll never get a chance to see William Tell again, live or otherwise, so I'll devote our session to this hero of the Swiss. In spite of the fact that William Tell has shot at the apple on his son's head, that he has not missed his mark, that he has exhibited heroic and stoic behavior during this terrible test. In spite of that, he is going to be thrown in a dungeon and will never be heard of again because of the second arrow. At which point, William Tell resolves, this is the end. This man is going to die if it's the last thing I do. And so he lies in ambush, waiting for the tyrant to come down some path or other. And he shoots him with the second arrow. Now there's a really interesting aspect to this. Not only is there a movement now to debunk the heroic Tell in Swiss history, but there's actually discussion now in academia by people who think about these things at our taxpayers' expense, I might add. Was that an immoral? So there are actually now a school of thought that says William Tell was not a hero on any level. He should never have shot the apple off his son's head to begin with. When the tyrant made such a terrible demand on him, he should have shot the tyrant dead right then and there, because William Tell had nothing to lose by that time. He was dead meat as far as the Habsburgs were concerned. So this new school of thinking said he was immoral in putting his own son at risk just because the tyrant wanted to punish him that way. But he was even more immoral because he ambushed the tyrant and shot him dead without the tyrant knowing that he was under attack. Which brings the whole story of William Tell, the opera, the play by Schiller, the historical aspect of this hero of Swiss independence, which takes it into a whole new realm, which is, and it's hotly discussed on the internet, are snipers immoral? Think about it. You know, I used to think a sniper like Chris Kyle, the American sniper, that they were skilled military people who did their duty, what was required of them. They were supposed to pick off some individual, and they did that with great skill and under great tension. And all of a sudden now I discover an underworld of doubt about whether military snipers or sniperism in general, is that an immoral act, that you're hiding, that the other person doesn't know he's going to be picked off. And so I found that extraordinarily interesting. I didn't know that there was a group of people who looked at the American sniper, Chris Kyle is his name, as an immoral man, and that there's much discussion about sniperism, as I just said. So to me that was very strange that suddenly snipers in military affairs should be, that their morals are up for discussion. And certainly it never occurred to me that William Tell did not have the grandest of moral reasons to pick off a tyrant who imposed such a terrible punishment on him, such an unnatural punishment, to shoot an apple off his son's head. And then that he took revenge on this tyrant and shot him dead seemed to me entirely natural. So it's just another strange reaction on the part of public opinion to things that you think are clear as the light of day, and to other people that are not clear. It's a moral issue, hotly debated. So I thought I would just run that aspect of William Tell by you as well. And so we were looking at two versions of the William Tell story, a documentary by some charming old conductor, Nello Santi. The documentary is very old. Nello Santi must be good and dead by now, mainly from drinking wine like lemonade. There's a shot of the conductor in that documentary where after a hard morning's working with the orchestra, he has lunch and sort of glug, 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 glugs his glass of wine, wants some more. And his wife is sitting next to him, sort of tut-tutting, but he's a famous conductor. He can drink as much wine as he likes. So we watched the apple shooting on that documentary. It was a bit creaky, but you know, it showed you one version of this famous incident. Now I'm going to show you the La Scala version. But before I get to the La Scala, I want you to know that I was there on Sunday morning. Where were you? I looked at everybody who came through the door. I thought, is it one of mine? No. But there must have been about 15 people there for the famous production from London, where I have to tell you that after the outcry of the rape scene and the stripping of this young woman before she was brutalized by the soldiers, and for a sort of a mysterious scene that the director decided to include, which is where all the mothers wash their children before Switzerland declares its independence. And so the rape scene and the stripping of the victim of the rape was modified. We never saw her nakedness, and there weren't any overtly sexual movements involved in it. Although at previous live performances, the audience had been incensed at the sort of realism in the rape scene. So they cleaned it up for the film version that we got to see. So there I was, and I was disapproving strongly, as you can imagine. I kept my voice down. I didn't boo, but it was a very, very strange production in which Tell is seen as a comic book hero that a young boy is infatuated with. And the whole incident with the apple shooting and the tyranny and all that sort of thing is interpreted in terms of the boy imagining and remembering what he read in his William Tell comic book version. In the version that we see on the stage, we are in Bosnia, I told you that, and everybody's wearing sort of Nazi-type uniforms, toting Uzis. Remember these big things? The only one who's not toting an Uzi is the chap who's supposed to be playing William Tell, who's toting a crossbow.
Oh.
And so it was all very confused, and I felt very sorry for the people who came to it cold, you know. I understood what was supposed to be happening there on the stage in the film, but God knows what the rest of them were thinking. So, what with the cleaning up of the rape scene and the little children were specially dressed in underwear for this washing scene, apparently, especially for the filming. So what with all that, I wonder what the audience at the River Oaks thought. Nobody came to me and said, what does it mean? Please get up and speak and explain this to us. Too bad. But, so that was my Sunday morning experience. And so, I showed you the documentary version of the apple shooting. Now I will show you the version from La Scala. So,
corri alla madre, e fa che tosto incenga sulle streva cima dei nostri monti la fiamma che i tre cantoni sia segnal di battaglia. La carezza la mia mente è chiama. A te mi rispondi il forzo, oh figlio questo, il solo, e ben salvarlo vuole, salvarlo lui, vuol farlo il suo, esser di Dio, il può parlare, il partir, l'incamargo e la tua, e solo io t'offesi, e solo tempo dir, oltre l'arbitro sei del suo perdono. Sul capo di tuo figlio si ponga questo pomo, col tardo tu lo devi sotto il mio sguardo colpire, oppure col tuo figlio perire, e dici mai, lo voglio, vuoi arrivi il decreto, sul figlio io mi perdo, e tu figlio del puoi comandarlo, mai troppo grande il delitto, obbedisci, ma tuo figlio mai, per un Dio che stelle obbedisci, mi ascolta, fascia di gesti, segna le fine, io non posso, muoio tua di trionfi, tu la vita d'impone, la vita di mio figlio, e su lei. Ai piedi tuoi lo scato sono. Benedico, figlio mio, piangendo. E tristo è dir sul petto tuo riprendo. La calva del tuo cuore mi torna a me vigore. Affetti miei, tacete, io non crevo, a bell'armi poi io non reggo. Io mi sostengo appena. Sei tu mio caro figlio. Io sto e scucciali la mia, e prego. Se riesco il mio ben salvai, un altro tanto è qui salvato. Ma te che sul ben, prego, nel zio tremare, e la vita te
that people are starting to think seriously about. Are snipers moral? Is sniperism ever morally warranted? Blah, blah, blah. This whole thing is based on emotion, and to read so much into the opera that you're going to have an entire production sort of affected by these deeper thoughts is putting too much of a burden on Rossini and the composer, and on audiences who just sort of wander into a performance without beforehand sort of even giving the slightest thought about who is William Tell, what's this thing about, what's the deeper significance. Now, Rossini was the composer for this, and Rossini was an Italian. He made most of his success in Europe with Italian opera, but then he went to Paris, which was at that time the center of the musical world. Opera was flourishing in Italy, yes, but nobody really treated opera as a serious art form that should be seriously thought about, seriously rehearsed, and seriously presented to the public. That only happened in Paris. So every self-respecting Italian opera composer hoped to be called to Paris or get a commission for one of the 4 opera houses in Paris at that time. And so Rossini, in the early part of the 1800s, being the most famous opera composer all over Europe, fed it wherever he went. Of course, went to Paris to see if he could land a couple of lucrative commissions there. And one of them was the story of William Tell, which he composed for a French libretto, because it was meant for French audiences. And so, as was the custom in those days, if an opera was wildly successful, it would eventually end up in Italian as well. So you have been listening to the Italian version, but originally the music was written for the French language, and it sounds very strangely different. They were singing it in French when I went to the River Oaks on Sunday morning, and it's amazing how to be reminded once again how language affects the music for which it was created, or vice versa. And so Rossini based this story of his opera on the famous play by Friedrich von Schiller, who was sort of the German Shakespeare, you might say. Every one of Schiller's plays, dramas has been turned into an opera, sometimes several times over. And I'll ask presently Morris to read the great Tell speech, not in its entirety because it's too long, but the great Tell parts of it when he deliberates about how to assassinate Gessler. Now the interesting part is that the Schiller play is extremely macho. It's all men, actually 24 people. The play is rather like a verbal grand opera, very, very large, requiring huge forces to be staged. It is mostly men. For the 20 or so male characters in the play, there are only 4 women, and their role is very marginal. That was just the attitude to women in those days, and particularly in Germany, which didn't exist at the time, but you know that the rudimentary area that we call rudimentary Germany. But here comes Rossini, who has been commissioned to turn Schiller's play into an opera. And Rossini was a real Italian. Every Italian boy loves his mamine.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter how much in love you are with whatever woman is around at the time, Mama is the one for whom you live. Mama is the one who will always lay claim to your affections, your loyalty. Whatever a mama needs from her son, an Italian son will give his mama. And so it was Rossini. He was extremely fond of his mother, and so he should be, because when Rossini was a little boy, he had a lovely voice and used it to great effect. His parents were in show business, so from age so little Rossini appeared with his parents on the boards. And this was at the turn of the 1700s into the 1800s, when the idea of castrating young boys at teenage to preserve their lovely angelic voice soprano voices was just beginning to be outlawed, to be considered cruel, to sort of drift out of fashion. But there was still enough interest in the castrato voice for people to advise Papa and Mama Rossini that if they had young Rossini castrated, he might become a famous male soprano, for which there was, at the turn of the century, still enough interest to make it worthwhile. And his mother sort of said, over my dead body. My son is not going to be cut. And so no wonder that Rossini held his mother in such high esteem, because she saved his manhood for him. But that is only, by the way, Italian young men love their mothers. And so that is why in the operatic version of the Schiller play, the mother plays a very strong part. And nowhere in Schiller do they call on Jemmy's mother, or do they mention Jemmy's mother? Remember, he says that, Jemmy, think of your mother. She expects us back, tous les deux, both of us, both of us. So that's a typical Rossini touch. Rossini feeling strongly about his mother. The mother must be brought into the text for this grand effort called Guillaume Tell, or Guglielmo Tello, or as we know it, William Tell. I thought you might just like to know that. Another thing that is that I have spent, that I've wasted much time on, was crossbow versus longbow. Oh, because it's what Tell here has is a crossbow, and a crossbow is a totally different animal from a longbow. And so for a brief moment I was full of lore about the pros and cons of longbow versus crossbow, but it's all gone out of my head again. But it's interesting that for people who think about these things, the use of Tell's crossbow is a very interesting aspect of his life as an archer, as a huntsman. Now, when people discuss Tell as a sniper, this is not really true, because at the beginning of the story, or the Swiss version of the story of William Tell, he's simply a hunter, a very, very skilled hunter, who is then, on the basis of his skills, is punished and sentenced to shoot the apple of the kid's head. This is the first time that Tell is asked to shoot under duress, sort of thing, under great stress. And when he decides to lie in ambush and wait to pick off Gessler, that is the first time that he takes a sniper action. So to look at William Tell as a sniper is really not doing him justice. He just sort of rose to the moment that demanded from him the killing of his hated oppressor. So I thought I would just toss that out to you. Now, Maura, can you come and read in your stentorian tones?
Why don't you put the lights on?
Yeah, I will. The first, it's a huge Shakespearean speech. Schiller, as I said, was sort of the German Shakespeare. So you read from here till this part. And I'll switch on the light. Yes. Wow, let there be light. Yes.
Tell enters with his crossbow. Through this ravine he needs must come. There is no other way to Knutsart. Here I'll do it. The ground is everything I could desire. Yon elder bush will hide me from his view. And from that point my shaft is sure to hit. The straightness of the gorge forbids pursuit. Now, Gessler, balance thine account with heaven. Thou must away from earth. Thy sand is run. Quiet and harmless was the life I led. My bow was bent on forest game alone. No thoughts of murder rested on my soul. But thou hast scared me from my dream of peace. The milk of human kindness thou hast turned to rankling poison in my breast, and made appalling deeds familiar to my soul. He who can make his own child's head his mark, can speed his arrow to his foeman's heart. My boys were innocents. My loyal wife must be protected, tyrant, from thy rage. when last I drew my bow with trembling hand, and thou, with fiendishly remorseless glee, forced me to level at my own boy's head, when I, imploring pity, writhed before thee. Then, in the anguish of my soul, I vowed a fearful oath which met God's ear alone, that when my bow next winged an arrow's flight, its aim should be thy heart. The vow I made, amid the hellish torments of that moment, I hold a sacred debt, and I will pay it.
Of course, we applaud Morris, but we applaud Schiller. I mean, how many people realize what wonderful treasures of non-Shakespearean grandiloquence await you with these old-fashioned plays, you know. And Goethe and Schiller are sort of the great names in German literature. And Goethe wins the day because he was a philosopher and a scientist and all that sort of thing. But Schiller wins the day for sheer drama and sheer flood of inspirational lines. Marvelous, marvelous, marvelous. So now, just up until mine is murder. Just a minute. Who is it who said, "Let us sit upon this stone and think upon
Richard
it"?
II.
Right, right. So here's Schiller having exactly the same sort of imagery. Let me sit on this stone and ponder what lies ahead for me. Oh, yes?
Right, yes.
Yes.
I'll sit me down upon this bench of stone, hewn for the way-worn traveller's brief repose. For here there is no home. Men hurry past each other with quick step and careless look, nor stay to question of their grief. Here goes the merchant, all anxiety, the pilgrim with scanty furnished scrip, the pious monk, the scowling robber, and the jovial player, the carrier with his heavy laden horse, that comes to us from the far haunts of men. For every road conducts to the world's end. They all push onwards, every man intent on his own several business. Mine is murder.
Wow! 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 What?
What drama?
What drama, yes, and with these old-fashioned playwrights, you know, so often practically every line is an aphorism. Is that the word? You know, a pithy saying, like, for every road conducts to the world's end. That is so good. We must trot that out at some point, at the next dinner party. Let the theme be that for every road conducts to the world's end. Wonderful. And so you've seen the sort of heart of the operatic version of William Tell. And now I thought I'd just do something completely different and show you this very ancient documentary of this very old, lovable conductor who proclaims that William Tell is his favorite opera. So then he tells us why and how he feels about it. Now you must remember that the operatic segments in the documentary are very, very old and creaky. But you know, they're in there.
Vintage.
What?
Vintage.
Vintage. Ah, oh, well, sounds so much better than yes. So here we go.
Maestro Santi is everything. When I say everything, I mean he is maestro, father, friend, and counselor. Maestro Santi is a man who sings within himself and is able to transmit the song within him to the singer. He is the only opera conductor today who really makes operatic music. I don't know any others. I've worked with all kinds of people, with all kinds of conductors. But there is nobody else who gives me what Maestro Santi has taught me about music and humanity.
Quello che mi insegna, ma non per quell'opera, per la vita, per la mia carriera artistica, io penso che altro non ce ne sono.
A singer
Se
is
un
not.
interprete
The
già
more an artist has learned about the composer by studying all the musical, theatrical, and literary aspects of a piece, the more obligated he is to realize that it is his task to carry out that composer's wishes. He has no right to take liberties with the score by virtue of the simple fact that he is not the composer, and that fact should be liberty enough for him. I think it's enough that we are two different people. One of them sees it this way, another that way, but the ultimate goal of all of us should be not to betray the work. Sometimes you think you did what the composer meant, but in fact you've been unwittingly betraying him.
His father has been murdered by the Habsburgs. His house is empty, no father. Impossible to perform today because of the number of high tenors that it requires who are able to produce their high notes from the chest, and we discussed that at great length. So, and for the principal tenor here, this chap called Arnaldo, he has to deliver 17 high C's from the chest. Now remember, we made such a fuss about the daughter of the regiment, where the chap has to produce 9 high C's. 17 required from the guy who does Arnaldo. So That's something to bear in mind today as an obstacle to producing William Tell. But also what we should remember is what I told you, that in Rossini's day he would be producing that sound in his head voice, not from the chest, but in his head voice, which I still think today would be much more apropos. Here this guy is talking about his father. His father has been murdered. He's come to the castle and it's all empty. And where is Daddy, you know? And for him to produce this heroic voice from the chest as he laments his father is to me all wrong. He should be, tenors should have the guts nowadays for these tender moments, love duets, laments like that, to go into their head voice fearlessly. But then, you know, yes. I don't know, but
Salvatore somebody. It had his name earlier. Salvatore
yes,
somebody.
it's here, and it's on the box. But bear in mind, they're probably all dead. I mean, this is very, very old.
Making music is my hobby. There are plenty of office workers who work from Monday till Friday, and on the weekend they go for long rides on their bicycles. Then on Monday they come back to work refreshed, in top shape. This is why biking is their hobby. I don't ride a bike. I make music.
of William Tell in the form of the play by Schiller and the opera by Rossini is an homage to the beauties of nature, which was one of the great subjects of Romanticism. The beauties of nature, and then particularly the beauties of Switzerland, and how the beauty and the majestic mountains of Switzerland reflect the innate nobility of the Swiss, who live their lives in this magnificent scenery and are therefore inspired with magnificent thoughts of freedom and independence, that sort of thing. And so it was a real downer to see all these wonderful ideas of beauty and hear people describe the blue of the lakes and the snow on the mountains and all that sort of thing. And all you could see on the stage when I went to my movie experience was these people toting Uzis in the camouflage outfits in supposedly Bosnia. So whatever they do with William Tell, I think they should preserve the aspect of the Swissness of it. That is what Schiller had in mind, that is what Rossini certainly had in mind, and that's what we hear particularly at the beginning with this marvelous overture, which is really a tone poem of the beauties of Switzerland, and a tone poem describing how in the mountains, how quickly things can change from dappled, sunlit meadows into raging storms and lightning, and especially the lake on which the William Tell story takes place, Lake Lucerne, it's called, in Switzerland it's called the Lake of the Four Mountain Cantons, which are like provinces. There's a great deal of mention made of the storm on the lake, and also in the music. This is wonderfully reflected, this storm music, and particularly in the overture, as I said. And that should be acknowledged on the stage, because the storms that sometimes occurred on Lake Lucerne are of a particular ferocity, because the Lake Lucerne is surrounded like it's like water in a basin by these huge mountains. So when the storm winds toss up the waves, it's like stirring a basin. The waves have nowhere to go except crash into one another with tremendous force and ferocity. And that is why in both the play and in the opera, a good deal of notice is taken of the fact that not only is William Tell a great shot, a great hunter with the crossbow, but he's a great oarsman as well. And at two instances in the story, he's able to save people's lives from perishing on the waves, stormy waves of Lake Lucerne. And so I thought, since you heard part of the ending on the documentary, I'll give you part of the ending of the Scala production, and then we bid goodbye to William Tell and Rossini forever and ever, because I doubt that it will ever come into our compass. That's Mrs. Tell. The signal for the breaking out of the Swiss Revolution of Independence was that on all the mountain tops there should be blazing fires. That would be the signal for everybody to rise in revolt.
scombrigate. La Svizzera respiri, a te che spero. Son quelle mura
1829, the opera world was not yet as responsive to political feelings, currents of thought, as it became when Verdi took the baton, when Verdi took the mantle and crown and scepter of being the king of Italian opera. But you can see how opera, even though it might not have been intended for patriotic uses at the time or commissioned for such use, that you could really use these tremendous finales to infuse some kind of spirit of something or other in the populace. And so, hard as it is to believe, although I've told you this over and over, but I'm directing that to the kiddywinks over there, that opera became a very important tool in building feelings of nationhood in Europe, because you know, of course, there was no Italy, there was no Germany at this time, there was no, where are we, Czechoslovakia or anything at the time. There were just France and England and Russia, and for the rest it was all these little pieces of real estate that were in the mid-1800s beginning to feel their oats. They wanted to be recognized as entities, national entities. And so opera was such a wonderful mover and instigator and inspiration for these feelings of independence and liberty and that sort of thing. So this gives this finale, even though Rossini did not intend for it to be patriotic for Italy or for Germany, it certainly represents the use of it much later on when all these nationalist feelings sort of exploded. When Verdi became the king of Italian opera, he was seized upon immediately by the politicos to foster this feeling of nationhood and independence. And unlike Rossini, he responded. This is what they want from me, then I'll give it to them in spades. And so after this opera by Rossini, after which Rossini never wrote another opera, although he lived another 30 or so years, after this we get Verdi with his inspirational kind of choruses that were happily adopted by the Italian people as speaking for their desire to shake off the yoke of the Habsburgs. At which point I'm about to end my harangue, my class with the usual harangue about bring back the Habsburgs. What a lot of trouble we would have avoided in Bosnia and all those places if we had just left the Habsburgs to do their thing in the northern part of the German-speaking world and then over to Central Europe. And so, thanks for being here. I feel quite uplifted. I don't know how I'm going to face the rest of the day with all these intense emotions. And so there will be no opera talk for the next 2 Fridays. Be sure to take this with you to remind you of the date. I'm deeply impressed that you were here in this threatening weather, and it has just occurred to me that I was going to open the proceedings with 2 jokes. Now, I'm very, very anti-joke. I hate jokes because they are not, I like witticisms, I like puns, those sort of things, but not jokes. But here are 2 jokes that I simply must tell you apropos of the subject of our gathering. And so these are 2 Swiss jokes. And one of them is a teacher addressing his class and asking a boy called Fritz, who was the first man on earth? And the little boy says, William Tell. No, the little boy said, wait, now I've got it. Yeah, the little boy says William Tell. And then the teacher says, no, the first man was Adam. And so the kid says, well, if you're talking about foreigners. Okay, and the other joke is, how many sons did William Tell have? And everybody pipes up, says one, the one who got his head, the apple done. And the answer there is, no, he had two. One was for practice, and the other one was for the real thing. Are you with me? Yeah. Okay. And so class dismissed, and thank you for, as I said, for being here. And don't forget liberté, égalité, fraternité, and you can take that to your mother.